Hello everybody, my name is Mario5514 and welcome back to another Splatoon Reacts video. In this video we're going to be looking back at another weapon from the Splatoon 1 era, and that weapon is none other than the Custom Jet Squelcher with Burst Bomb and Kraken. A Custom Jet Squelcher, the sub-weapon lets you corner your opponents, and the quirky special weapon makes for a tricky package. I wouldn't say Kraken is quirky, it's broken. And yeah, if you've watched me react to CRB and 96 Deco, you know full well that Kraken is a broken special. And it was the special, along with Bubbler, that dominated Splatoon 1's meta, which I will talk about when I go into Splatoon 1's history. Yeah, this was also one of the best kits in the game. Despite the weapon not being meta, it was still a very solid weapon. It got to see a bit of niche uses, which was nice. You see that? Yeah. Originally, Jet Squelcher only dealt 31 damage in Splatoon 1, and it wasn't until Splatoon 2 that Jet Squelcher got a damage buff going from 31 to 32 damage. So, and as we look at it in Splatoon 3, it still deals 32 damage. So they try to make its 4-shot more consistent, which I do get. So that's nice. So at this time, Jet Squelcher wasn't really that good, but still, the weapon was a solid option. It was a solid weapon. Did you notice? And you also saw how this person was able to get Kraken at a decent pace. Like I've mentioned when I talked about Kraken in, for CRB and 96 Deco, Kraken was 200p, so any weapon that could ping very well wouldn't have as much trouble getting their special. Unlike if you're using CRB, which couldn't ping very well, since you know blasters are the worst painting weapons in the game, it could have a bit of trouble, but still, Kraken was a very powerful and very broken special that could make up for some of the weapon's problems, you know? So, I mean, this was one of the weapons that people tend to gravitate towards, but I mean, CRB was the popular option, given that it had its old blast radius at the time. But still, Kraken is still a special that people could get, especially if you're playing it in Splatoon 1, if you're playing it through Pretendo. So, I mean, yeah, Kraken is one of the most broken specials in the game. Despite being 200p, there are many weapons that can get Kraken fairly easily. Also, another thing worth mentioning is, I think I've mentioned this previously in many videos, if you were wearing Defense Up, not only would Defense Up reduce the damage dealt from the main weapon, but it also reduced the amount of damage dealt from the sub-weapons, as well as the specials. So it was basically the flip side of Damage Up. That's what defense up was. And there was a meta that I know of that people ran a lot of damage up and defense up, which I will talk about when we get into the history of Splatoon 1. So yeah, defense up would reduce the damage dealt from the main sub and special weapon, while damage up would do the opposite. So yeah, it's kind of like if you're using defense up, you negate damage up, but if you run damage up, you would basically almost negate the effects of defense up. So it's basically like they cancel each other out, or they neutralize each other. Yeah. And like I mentioned for CRB and 96 Deco, you saw how fast that startup was. Yeah, Kraken had a 1-frame startup. That's right, it had a 1-frame startup, and that was one of the things that made Kraken broken. It had 2 very powerful attributes, which I will talk about in Splatoon 1's history, but I'll just give you a bit of a rundown for it, very quick. Kraken, like I've mentioned, has 2 very powerful attributes. The first one being having a 1-frame startup, meaning that you could just panic it pretty much instantly. And the second one having a 1-shot hitbox. So yeah, you perform a jump attack, it's a 1-shot. They're going down for the count. They're not coming back. And Jet Squelcher used 1.6% of your ink tank, which was how much ink H3 consumed back in Splatoon 1 prior to its ink consumption nerfs in Splatoon 2. So yeah, and going into Splatoon 2 and Splatoon 3, Jet Squelcher is one of the few weapons that has kept its original ink consumption rate since the beginning. So it's kind of interesting that most weapons in certain aspects or in certain attributes of the weapons have never been really touched. Or Nintendo just looked at it and is like, nah, it's fine. Also, looking at Jet Squelcher in this game, you can definitely tell that it looks, it's old. And if you compare this model in Splatoon 1 to Splatoon 3, Custom Jet Squelcher has remained largely unchanged since the beginning, though the one noticeable change that they did for C-Jet in Splatoon 3 is that the nozzle color is completely different. Unlike in this game and in Splatoon 2, Custom Jet Squelcher basically shared the same nozzle color as the regular model, or V-Jet, which was white or gray. But in Splatoon 3, C-Jet has a yellow-colored nozzle, to make it as like, hey, this is from Custom, like its second kit, to distinguish it from the first one. That was the only change they did for Custom Jet Squelcher. But, looking at this in Splatoon 1, it just looks a lot better. And like I've mentioned before, the designs in Splatoon 1 are a lot better. They're 2 times better than in the later games. And yeah, I think the designs are more thought out, especially if you're looking at like Splatter Shot, Splat Roller, and Splat Charger, which you could definitely see the designs, the original designs, like they look more thought out. And if you look at it in Splatoon 2, you can definitely see the designs becoming a little bit more mediocre. And as soon as you jump into Splatoon 3, the mediocrity really stands out a lot. Yeah. Unlike most weapons, which I think Range Blaster is like one of the few weapons that actually got an update in its design, and its design looks better in Splatoon 3 than it did in the previous 2 games. But I mean, Range Blaster in Splatoon 1 and 2 is basically regular blaster, but its barrel was extended outwards a little more, giving it more range. Yeah. But still, I think Splatoon 1 does a lot of the designs better. And that's it. That is the video. Thank you all for watching. If you guys like the video, be sure you subscribe and don't forget to leave a like on the video. If you want to see more videos like this, just send a comment below. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time. And until then, stay fresh.